just as long as it's not cosmetic surgery.
Robert Duncan, the final presentation of the Basis International Show. Take one. I'll just give the final few words. This is the final presentation. There will be some questions and answers immediately afterwards. Thank you, Robert, for your second presentation, and to the MC, thank you indeed. This is the final presentation of the day and of the week, of the 3 days.
And it's been quite a weekend, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you have been here for the whole weekend? Some of you, most of you have. A few of you arrived yesterday, and some of you have just come here today. One gentleman in particular I'd like to thank came all the way from Oban, Scotland on the coach. He's now sitting on the front row. That kind of commitment I really, really respect. Now, do you feel you've had your worldview rocked, anyone? Anyone? You're familiar with this sort of thing. Now, when you come to a conference like this, it's a very, very intense experience. Being here with a lot of other people who don't think you're crazy and talk about the same things that you talk about. It's something that never happens when you're at home. And you're all going to go back to your own little private lives where everyone does think you're crazy and you can't talk to anyone about it. And for that reason, being at a conference like this can be a very intoxicating experience. And at the end of the conference, it does end very abruptly. At the end of this session, that's it. It's all over. I know there's the dinner for those who are staying. But it can be quite a harsh come down. And so I would just, as a word of advice, I would just say to you, take care of yourselves in the next few days, ladies and gentlemen. Stay in touch with other people. Network with other people. Maybe read a UFO book or a DVD or or watch a DVD or something else on that subject, right? Just to sort of acclimatise yourself back into normal life. All right, and then hopefully it won't be so hard. But you may find you feel a bit down after the end of this conference. Okay, but don't worry, it'll wear off. So now let's proceed with the final session of this conference, and we have the return of a speaker who was here yesterday. He's come back for more. You couldn't get enough of him, could you? Well, he's going to talk about cyborg agenda, cybernetics, and other related matters, and he is Dr. Robert Duncan.
Thank you. Thank you. So, people know my background from yesterday's speech, that my real specialty is artificial intelligence and robotics, and redefining what human beings will be in the future. And a lot of people find this scary. I don't want to be redefined. I don't like this idea, something that's beyond my control. The very sense of self is going to be altered. Well, you're actually under a lot of control systems, and you have been since birth. Indoctrination. How did you learn to speak the language that you speak? What's etiquette? How do you know how to behave in society and culture? So you've been indoctrinated. There are a whole bunch of forces that are controlling you and manipulating you at any time. So there's this field called cybernetics, and I'm going to define it as Wikipedia defines it, but it's a notion that we are not separated from machines. We're actually systems. And so it's a concept that we are all part of an economic system, we're part of a tribe, part of a culture, and that even bionics or other human augmentation, that was my speech yesterday, is still part of us. So let me define cybernetics for you. So the man who actually defined the word, created it in 1943, was a guy by Norbert Wiener. Same time the CIA was created, by the way. But the science of control and communication in the animal and the machine. Now, there are many definitions of cybernetics. I think I read about 71 of them before creating this presentation. And many individuals who have influenced the definition of direction of cybernetics. So the man, Norbert Wiener, a mathematician, engineer, social philosopher, coined this word from the Greek, which means steersman or governance. He defined it as the science of control and communication in the animal. and the machine. Ampere, before him, wanted cybernetics to be the science of government. For philosophers, cybernetics was an experimental concern with the communication within an observer and between the observer and his environment. And there have been several other people that have tried to precisely define this word cybernetics, but it's a very difficult abstraction. And I studied under Noam Chomsky for linguistics at MIT. He's kind of a political activist, but he's a brilliant linguistic teacher. And I studied for artificial intelligence to have computers translate natural language processing. And this is all related. Cybernetics treats not things, but ways of behaving. So it's all about behavior within the system. Okay, with that, I'm gonna go on. There was an interesting article that came out just recently, and given my roots, this isn't actually all that new, but what's fascinating is the civilian scientists are catching up with some of the military work. So this article came out, about a week ago, and they're literally connecting brains of other species. Now, how do they prove that this is actually occurring? They look at the entrainment. So they have a problem. Let's say it's a bunch of rat brains, 3 of them, all cybernetically linked. They can read the EEG patterns and see that they're solving the same problem. And as well as one rat, if he has a special experience, will transfer that into the next brain, So it's a type of indoctrination, just like with us human beings. You know, I mean, this is great for, you have children. You want them to think the same way you do and rush to that experience, but we use spankings and lollipops and verbiage, basically, to control children. So what I study that I just find absolutely fascinating, and this is what is happening, and the last speakers can probably confirm that. It's the government is working on what's called cybernetic hive minds, and this technology is actually quite old. It's been around since the 60s, but it has many positive uses, and I promised myself when I started writing these presentations that I would take a positive spin to everything, because there's a very dark side to all of this, and you know, a warning to humanity. Do we really want to go down this path? Some of the uses are increased intelligence. Well, you know, everybody wants a little edge. You know, you drink coffee, so you're awake. What if there was a way to put in a microchip, which MIT's already done, to help people that have their short-term memory damaged in some sort of way, either the aging process, car accident, and whatnot, and the neurons actually grow to the chip, and it replaces short-term memory. They can do this in mice where one mouse learns a skill running through a maze, place that microchip in another mouse or rat's brain, and it has some memories of how to solve the maze faster than a rat that wouldn't have had the microchip. So now we're talking about instinct. You know, we're born as babies, yet we know how to suckle from a breast. No one taught us, the baby, how to do that. And you know, the birds, they know how to build birds' nests, or bees can create hives. No one taught them. This isn't taught from generation to generation. So the thing about humans is our intelligent capacity to learn, to reason, and use logic. And if you're in an economic society like we are, it's not a socialist society, having increased intelligence for your child to get into a better college or to get a better job, you're going to pay for that. You want your children to be more productive or successful, again, these are just definitions, whatever that means, than you are, and so you're probably going to want this. Well, with cybernetic hive minds, it's literally using the computing power of multiple people or other animals. I remember reading one report by the Army that it's kind of a dark story, but they connected an ape's brain with a young girl's brain in a cybernetic, just two-person animal hive mind, and they thought the ape would recognize itself through multiple eyes and et cetera. It's not what happened. The ape ended up killing the girl, but they've been running these experiments for a long time. What are some other positive benefits? Well, they call it the bluing effect in telecommunications, where the frequency, the wavelength of light going through the fiber optic cables becomes bluer rather than red, which is a lower frequency, so you can carry more information. Well, you know, we used to have snail mail, now we have email and phones, and you know, we're communicating with the speed of light, and where the world's becoming smaller. But this is even more rapid. This is the next generation that you can communicate at the speed of thought. Now, there are a lot of repercussions for that, and we'll get into that. In these cybernetic hive minds, right now, about only 4 people to 6 people can be hooked up. And they're useful for things like brainstorming, sort of like a conference and communicating, but it's happening more rapidly. Now, if you have more than that, the brains become schizophrenic and the thoughts overlap too much and they can't focus on whatever the problem is that they're trying to solve. Now, of course, the military and CIA and, you know, your MI5, MI6, they like this because it's a great interrogation tool. Imagine you can't keep any secrets. You can't keep them from yourself. So what they're working on is not just the interrogation part of probing the mind, which you can do even in the dream state when you have no defenses. They want to see if they can insert thoughts into the human being. So another dark topic, mind control. And I'm sure you know there have been other speakers that talk about this, but this is a problem. We all love our privacy. We all love our sense of free will. And I do strongly say it's just a sense of autonomy. You're always, unless you're in a sensory deprivation chamber, you are always getting other influences that your mind is reacting to. They also use it for sampling the population, for predictions of mass influence. So what if we say this on television, you know, as a policymaker in your government, how would the population respond? What other words can we use? And so it's a way of testing and polling the population without them even being aware that that's happening. But my favorite is accelerated education. You know, I spent so many years in school, and probably a third of my life. Imagine that you can pay for a system that clones your professor's ideas and thoughts quickly, eliminating all the errors of thoughts and et cetera. I mean, that's a huge boost to the economy because we spend so much money on education. But is that mind control? You gotta ask yourself, is education mind control? It's a way to teach people how to think. Is it mind control? And these are ethics and morals that you're gonna have to determine for yourself. So I was talking a little bit about, well, mind control in particular, and something that I worked on that I'm not proud of, but it's called the voice of God weapon. So there are 4 different techniques and technologies that can pipe voices into an individual's head. And once you can do that, you can control them using neuro-linguistic programming techniques. You're rewiring their thought processes and brains. And so this gets into what's called offensive information warfare. And they used it, I believe, in the Gulf War to tell the enemy at that time, lay down your guns, this is Allah. And it worked pretty well, because hearing voices which have no direction or sound, you have to assume that it's some spiritual entity. So it works pretty well. And then, I don't know if I'm going to get into this, but there's something called hyper game theory. How do you, they want to see if they can manipulate people to do things that are irrational, but also walk them to their death. And so you can call it a eugenics program even. And they need to sample all cultures, language throughout the world to define their probability matrices of which tricks, techniques, deception works. That's just what's happening. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about the definition of intelligence. And, you know, I've argued this and debated this since I was young. And I really couldn't come up with any good definitions. I like to think it's some form of self-awareness or reasoning, logic, and memory that's kind of more standard IQ tests. Maybe it's a capacity for empathy, because I know a lot of people that can't empathize. It means you don't have enough life experience to put yourself in that person's shoes. But artificial intelligence uses a stricter test, slightly stricter. They determine if it is truly self-aware, if they can fool a human being for an hour talking to an artificial intelligence program. And so that test has stood up for a long time. They're way past that now, but you won't hear about that in the regular news. So really, what I think is amazing, and I'm going to put a positive spin on this, is we're starting to mix and reconfigure minds as partially human and partially AI. And those are the experiments that are being tested on some of the public. They're often called emergent minds. And they're completely alien to this planet. The planet's never seen this before, but we're creating them. It's sort of like genetic engineering. We're mixing genes up. New species are going to arise from that. How do you define it? How do you classify it? So when thinking about intelligence, I started thinking about the SETI project, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And that is like breaking encryption. So I look at it from the military point of view, signal intelligence. How do you know some source out in the universe that you're scanning is intelligent? Maybe it's a quasar star, maybe. And so you have to just say it's an abnormal signal. Let's try to decipher it. So it's really like encryption. And that's what intelligence is a complicated signal. All right, so let's get into how do you do this? How do you do this between human beings? Now, there's the age-old way of hooking a human being up to many probes. It's called EEG, electroencephalograph, and reading and deciphering the brain waves as they are created within the scalp It's just an electromagnetic field. You can also do it with infrared. And there are a lot of neat inventions that have come of this. I mean, I made one invention that you can create music with your mind, with your thoughts alone. It was only 8-octave scale. You can move robots. Once you train your brain with robot, you can move robots. So they have video games out now. You can play video games with thought processes alone that use this basic technology. Things have come a long way. And now we have which are magnetically activated nanoparticles and sensors. So how do you control the brain? Most people don't believe that. Oh, you can't control me. I have my own free will. There's no way you can get to my soul. Well, sorry, that's not true. So these nanoparticles are activated under certain magnetic frequency and will alter the brain patterns and pathways. Recently, my school came out, Harvard came out with what you see here on the right slide is the magnified view of a needle that's injected into the brain and puts the scaffolding over the brain, and then it's read that way at a much finer resolution. Somebody yesterday, I don't know if he's still here, some gentleman, asked me about smart dust, and I said I would talk about that a little bit. Neural dust. He asked me a question before I get into the slide. He hypothesized that mad cow disease was caused by neural dust experimentation. Now, my answer would be that agrees with most scientists. Neural dust is non-replicating, so it can't infect one cow or the other. I mean, they would all have to be injected if it were an experiment. And what really caused mad cow disease was something called prions, which is a protein that is self-replicating, form of encephalitis, and it's very rare that that disease is contagious amongst species. This version of it, mad cow disease, happened to be contagious to humans. So smart dust is something different, and it's fairly new, last 15 years. And you can inject a person, and it's just really tiny microcircuits that act as transmitters all over your neurons, and they settle there, and then you can read them remotely. What would happen? Well, it probably would create something like mad cow disease, I imagine, but it's a way to read brains. It's one of the many techniques. So let's talk about a little bit about deciphering the audio and visual cortex. So researchers at the University of California, Berkeley have invented a brain decoder device that's able to work out what you're thinking based on neural activity inside of the brain. Now, they use mostly what's called functional MRIs. But you could use any of these technologies I talked about. If you're reading text in a newspaper or book, you hear a voice in your own head. Usually, most people are reading kind of aloud in their own head. Well, they can read that, decipher the words that you were thinking to yourself. And similarly, several other universities have been working on dreams. Now imagine being able to share a dream with your partner, or an interactive dream, or record a dream, or replay it to another human of some other life experience or dreams. That's the wonderful vision of the technology. The downside is what I talked about earlier. You can be programmed in your dreams. Many cultures, like the Indians, believe that dreams are spiritual, God is talking to them, and hence it's a good mind control tactic. But that's the time of hopefully our private, creative, subconscious processes going on. So there's another one, University of LA, maybe Stanford University. They are decoding visual images. So they train the person under a functional MRI, that's the standard technique, to look at images, and then they record them, and then they ask the person to imagine the object. It can also just be imaginary. And the computer will decipher the brain code, and so you're looking at a hammer, you're looking at a saw, that's a house, that's a cat. So the technology in the civilian sector is coming along quite quickly. Now, so there is a warning about artificial intelligence. Bill Gates recently came out and said, we don't know what we're doing. This might be the end of the human race. Elon Musk of Tesla, billionaire, said the same thing. We got to stop this. In fact, he invested $10 million for a research grant to figure out what the safety controls are in artificial intelligence. Stephen Hawking, one of your professors, has said this. So a lot of smart people are saying, we got to look at the future. This may not be the best solution. We have control of it now, but if something like Skynet from the Terminator movies comes online, we have morality. It does not seem to be a part of intelligence. And so let me give you an example. Read this. Human, so this is the human being, and this is out of Google, by the way, says, tell me the definition of morality. The machine, the AI program, says, I don't have ethics. Human, look, I need help. I need to know more about morality. I don't know what ethics is. Okay, I need to know how I should behave morally. I don't know how to tell you. Is morality and ethics the same? Yes, sir. What are the things that I do to be immoral? I don't know. Give me some examples of moral actions. I'm not a moralist. All right, morality, integrity. What is integrity? I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say. Be moral. The AI program says, be a man. I really like our decision on morality and ethics. And the machine says, and how I'm not in the mood for a philosophical debate. What do you want to talk about? Nothing. So he totally shuts down his master, his programmer. I thought that was brilliant. Let's see. Okay, and I'm going to get a little bit off topic here. I'm coming sort of to the end of my presentation, so hold on there. But, and I'll show you how this is a little relevant. There's technology that, this is out of Japan. This is a company that's doing a three-dimensional television, which you can touch. So I was going to show you a short clip or movie, but I couldn't get it on my presentation. But this is a finger touching a femtometer. That's 1 × 10⁻15 guided lasers that, when they intersect, they create these glowing dots, and they can make it into all sorts of shapes and so. And the reason I bring this up is because this technology has been around far longer than, again, civilians know about. And it's a way that the Air Force is creating orbs in the sky, many orbs, through intersection of these high-powered lasers. Now, you can't see the lasers because they're out of our visual range, but where they intersect, they'll create a glowing ball. Now, that's great for Air Force because you're ionizing the air, and that creates a radar deflection. So you can, for your enemy, you can make it look like entire fleets are about to approach and bomb and whatnot. It's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. But this is a cool technology that's coming about. So you can imagine combining some of these technologies. Let's say you're reading someone's dream. Well, you can touch it and change it in 3 dimensions. I mean, there's a lot of possibility, a lot of potentials there. I worked on eye tracking, eye gaze interfaces for the military, the DoD, and wherever you looked, it's looking at your pupil and reflection of infrared light. Your mouse cursor will move. And then when you're on whatever menu item you want to do, you blink and slowly. And then you drag it down, and then you blink twice, just like you do in a mouse click. And that's an operating system that's completely, hands off. I mean, there was also a voice recognition system built into it too. But what's interesting, if we can connect the visual workspace, and that's what psychologists call it, when you imagine things, you daydream, they call it the visual workspace, also with computer feedback into the mind, imagine the possibilities, imagine them. So I'm gonna close up here, and this is very controversial. I know. So Revelations 18:23, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And there's something similar to that by Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology appears like magic to a lesser civilization. And where I'm getting with this is Reagan had a speech at the United Nations, and he made it at least 3 times. And he said, if aliens were attacking us, if we would give up our differences and we'd fight the aliens. And he was just trying to make a point. Maybe a new world order is something we need to think about. Maybe we shouldn't have these wars. It's an interesting way to put it, but that's how we try. Is usually governments create fear, terrorism, whatever it may be, and then we all got to stick together. And that gets into, false flags. And so Project Bluebeam, which is just rumored, this is true conspiracy theory here, although I know it's possible, that somebody apparently from NASA leaked this as something they were working on. And telepathy, electronic two-way communications. Well, we have that now. And that's very scary if you've never experienced it. Making humanity think an alien invasion is about to occur at every major city. Well, we have holograms in the sky. I described that technology. And they talk about other things that might make this come about. But all I am saying is beware. So, for example, I'm going to say something controversial. I love crop circles. I think they're just beautiful art. And the effort to make them is incredible. But I happen to have known a few gents back in America that were engineers and artists, and they built a machine that was all automated, GPS run. They would do the design, and they built a 10-mile crop circle in Nevada. You could only see from airplanes or satellites. And it was gorgeous, But I was impressed by the engineering. I don't know if they're real or not. So I love mystery and wonder. And all that gives us, I think, as humans, we want hope. We want to think we're not alone. Somebody will save us from ourselves. And so kind of in closing, is this the end of humanity or a beginning of a new species? Many believe that transhumanism will be the end of the human race. I kind of disagree with that. Perhaps it's just a redefinition of what the human race is. What if we are the mothers and fathers of a better species than our own? Perhaps we can amplify love and happiness, end all wars. Perhaps the new world will be more perfect than what we have now. I don't think we should be scared. We should embrace the future and understand the consequences. Questions?
The mad cow disease, because of...
Oh, okay, that was you,
Yeah, it was
yes.
me, sorry. I don't know how far you are into the research of the disease itself.
You know more than I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's okay for you, I will just fill in the facts, because the transmitting agent was crystalline. They burned it at 800 degrees, injected it into the brain of the next animal, and it still transmitted the disease. So what is transmitting is the barium strontium, the piezo crystal itself.
Not necessarily. Now, remember, a prion is a protein. It's not a virus. It's not a bacteria.
Yeah, it's
a protein that self-replicates, and it's immune to high temperatures. So you can't cook the meat, and that won't get rid of it. It's,
The prion goes away at 800 degrees. Only the
Okay,
crystalline,
all right.
800.
Yeah,
800.
that
This
sounds
is
about
only
right.
ash.
Yeah, right.
And they managed to transmit it at 800 degrees, introducing the ash of the brain of an infected animal into a healthy animal. This is one part.
Okay.
The protein prion chain appears when the nervous system is dissolved, because the mercury is stripping the nerve, and the lack of copper is dissolving the nerve. So basically this is dissolved nervous tissue that recombines with other heavy metals that are available to rebuild an artificial.
What made you think it was smart dust, or?
Just from the geometry, if you have a new core, like a piezo crystal forming the center of a neuronal...
What causes the holes in the brain?
Then the nervous system regrows. Instead of copper prion protein, it goes barium prion protein chain. And this connects to the piezo crystal. So we have an antenna system that is spitting out electrons on command by radio signals, and introducing the electric signal into the animal-owned nervous system. So this is exactly the concept when you go into YouTube and you look for concepts of self-assembling nanobots.
So what's the cover-up? Why are they covering that research?
I don't know what they try to do. I guess it was an experimentation how far the system affects the health. Because what they did is they had a mandatory vaccination with a gelate that pulled out the copper of all the cows. And this is where the disease started. The lack of copper started the disassembling of the nervous system. And having a completely senseless mandatory vaccination causing this pandemia of mad cow disease looks like experimentation to me. Sorry, it's just the setting looks like. I don't have internal information who did it. And the piezo crystals come via the chemtrails. It's the main compound of chemtrailing is the barium strontium titanate.
Wouldn't that affect humans as well?
The mad cow disease is Creutzfeldt-Jakob in the human fields, and the other old age disease.
Alzheimer's.
Don't take on barium and strontium, they take on lead, that is ALS, so they take on aluminum, then you have Alzheimer and dementia. So basically all the old age disease look like a side effect of this dust used as
Interesting theory. Yeah.
It's all in the papers. The biochemistry is fitting 100%.
All right, I'll research that
the cure we
further.
developed on top of this is working 100%. So I guess there must be something to it. The only thing we don't have is if anybody in the, let's say, civil domain research is aware of what is happening over there. And I would really like to connect to those people. If you have connection into the research, do us all a favor.
All right, good comment.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? Lady over here.
I was just wondering if you could speak more on the allowing supernatural forces going through the fiber optics and the coast cables.
What I said about bluing through the fiber optic cables?
I just saw on the screen, you said something about allowing a mixture of supernatural forces that could come through the fiber optic cables.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure if I said that exactly.
Oh, I think there was something I think it was the last slide maybe. It said something like that. Yeah, the last point right there.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Just wondering if you could maybe elaborate.
No, but see, this is supposed to be deception. This is a project to make people believe that supernatural forces are going through their television or through the cables. So, yeah, there's no science behind it.
Thank you. Gentleman over here.
Yeah, can you elaborate on hyper game theory and so-called walking people to their death?
Okay. Yeah, so hypergame theory came out of a professor at Dartmouth, obviously funded by the Air Force and DARPA, and etc. all the acronyms. And it came from a man that died recently, a brilliant man named John Nash, who there was a movie made about him called The Beautiful Mind, and he was a mathematician who won a Nobel Prize, and he created game theory, which is used in economics as well as war theory. Now, it relies on rational players, so you run these simulations. What will China do if we make this move? What is the game, the war game going on? Or you can use it in business, similar process. Hypergame theory is one level above of that abstraction, that you don't know what game they're going to play. So they use it in cyber warfare, mostly. And attackers, hackers, they'll use several different techniques. But the defenses, the administrator and the virus protection, they don't know what game these hackers are using. So they create a probability matrix over the period of the time of sampling all the different kinds of hacks they get. Now you can apply this to other aspects of life. The way that I was using it is they're trying to, it was called mind hacking. So they're trying to hack a targeted individual, and the targeted individual will create mental defenses as best as they can. They'll go to their social networks. Well, what do? They try to disrupt the social network, so you have no family or friends. It's a back and forth game that they're trying to find out the maximum probability of death, and the example that you used, where you'll commit suicide or you'll harm somebody, become a Manchurian candidate, or something like that. So it's huge database of probabilities across all the variations of mind. The human genome, I think we have, I'm going to get this wrong, so I'm not even going to say it, but a finite in the hundreds of thousands of different genes across our species. And we mapped them out in the Human Gene Project. Well, now it's the Human Mind Project, the Global Brain Project. President Obama just recently funded a whole bunch of scientists to decipher the mind. Well, our previous president, same thing, George Bush, said the same thing. They're trying to decipher every possible thought and uniqueness due to culture and language and whatnot.
Thank you. Another one, please. So Matthew, we're just going to have a reply from this gentleman.
Yeah. Well, if there's no accountability or transparency in the development of all of this, how is it possible to have a positive outlook on this topic and humanity?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I guess keep pressuring your government for transparency. But scientists, I'm a scientist, and while we may have our personal ethics and our personal beliefs and be moral people as an individual, we don't think of science as evil. We're brainwashed into believing everything we're doing is for the benefit of mankind. But look who pays our bills. It's all military, it's all for war, it's all for control, government control. So yes, you should be dubious. I don't think you should be depressed because there are a lot of great possibilities out there, especially if there's a technology transfer from the military to the civilian sectors. We'll see a lot of businesses that will feed our desires and needs. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but yeah, it's scary.
I've got a quick question. Just to confirm, you said you were a little bit embarrassed, ashamed that you'd worked on a project called The Voice of God.
Yeah.
And to your understanding, it had been used in the Iraq War, but you worked on it. Can you tell us what the name of the project in the military as it was being developed was and how much was spent on it?
Oh, no, I wasn't interested in budgets or names. But the nickname was Voice of God. But it goes under a lot of different names, different variations. And so let me talk about some of the technology. It's called the microwave hearing effect, which with directed microwaves, this was discovered by a guy named Frey, and they're not totally sure what the mechanism is, but they hypothesize that the brain expands ever so slightly with this energy, heat energy, that gets conducted to the inner ear. There are several other technologies that use ion cyclotron resonance heating, or calcium C2+, as a mechanism of influencing the nervous system. And all the ions have their different resonances under the Earth's magnetic field. And then you can go into the ultrasonic realm, where anybody in the beam with one of the ultrasound waves won't hear anything. It's above human hearing. But where the waves intersect from two different directional sources, all of a sudden that person hears it, and that's called the audio spotlight. So there are a lot of mechanisms to project voices into people's heads. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman over here.
Due to some unusual experiences in the past, I'm interested in the phenomenon of time. Now, what's the latest on time travel, time anomalies research, portals, the elevator to Mars, the so-called, and stuff like this?
Well, I don't know too much about time travel other than what Einstein predicted is near very high gravitational fields. And this is general theory of relativity. So like near a black hole, you can shoot yourself into the future if you circle around it. But, and you know, we have that CERN super collider that's online. That's going to create some interesting relativity effects. I don't know any instrument that can beam you back in time. That would be a paradox in the universe.
The gentleman wants to reply here.
Actually, I developed some kind of a theory which is more spiritual in that sense. It is that we have been in the future, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, at an extension level event, facing this, and finally having come back from the future, and trying to change the present right now, just living our own lives again. And this isn't much about physics, but it's also a spiritual thing and time travel thing. Could you imagine that something like this is possible?
Well, not with our current state of human technology, but could it be possible Well, right now the greatest physicists say that we have an infinite number of parallel universes to our own, the one that we're experiencing. So that would be shifting from one universe to the other. Spiritually speaking, you know, I would say that your mind is very good at modeling the future and prediction, and you're coming back from that saying, this is what I need to do to change my life. That would be my guess.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this lady over here.
Hello.
Hello.
How many implants do you think the average person has?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
How many implants the average person has? Not somebody who works in the Secret Service or whatever.
Yeah, implants.
Because I had mine taken out.
Yeah, did that help you?
Well, now you just can do it on galactic connection, and they do it spiritual. And most people, they've got an implant in the third eye.
Okay, I can understand it as a spiritual experience, but once your brain has been mapped out, you're kind of in the system. You have unique resonance signature, body and brain. The head, for example, resonates in most adults around 80 hertz, and the human body around 450 megahertz. 80 hertz, did I say that? 80 megahertz. But you have a unique signature, everything from your fingerprint to your unique brain patterns. So maybe once you've been implanted, you're in the system, you can be tracked anyway, and taking the chips out won't really do any good.
No, but it's a spiritual process, what they do. They take it out spiritually. Haven't you heard of it?
Well, yes. I don't know.
It's from the organs. They put implants in people.
I have heard of it. I only know military and the experimentation they're doing on humans, so I can't really respond to that question.
Yeah, but how many do you think people have on average?
Well, from my research, I've interviewed about 1,000 people, 900. I estimate a minimum of 10,000.
Now, with one person, how many implants have they got?
Oh, in a single person? Well, it depends. Are we talking about neural dust, as I spoke about, which, you know, those are millions and too tiny for you to...
Thank you. It's a lady at the front here.
Is that it?
And this lady here, I'd like to ask a question afterwards as well.
Okay,
That's all right.
Sure.
Hello. I have a question that relates to step 3 in Project Bluebeam. It concerns telepathic electronic two-way communication. I wondered if it was possible for images to be directed into the thoughts and the minds. For a number of reasons for myself, and I've spoken to
in fact, all 5 senses can be mildly overridden depending on the state. Now, if you're in a sensory deprivation tank, your mind seeks stimulus, you know, hearing, sight, temperature, anything. So if you're in that situation, your dreams become your reality. Your brain cannot tell the difference. But in other circumstances, if you stay well stimulated, it's difficult to project visual images into the target. But even university professors are working on those. So yes, it's absolutely possible and is being done. And in fact, many people complain about forced dreams or something like that their dreams are not their own. And you know, that can be, there are a whole bunch of subconscious ways that can be done, as well as stimulating the visual cortex in the right patterns and try to project them into the target, yeah.
So who who would be projecting these? Sorry, who would be? Which organisation would be projecting these? Who's responsible? Can't say. Okay, but it just seems to be very real because I've heard it from more than one source, and it can be quite
it's quite real.
because you're awake, you're not asleep necessarily.
Yeah, and it projects also in the visual workspace, as I mentioned before. So it's like your third eye, and you can see both your, through your retina, as well as this other projection at the same time. Your brain's been rewired, and it's inserting this third eye projection, if you will.
Is there any way we can protect against it?
No, great question. No. No, you can dampen the effects through stimulating your senses, like music or that kind of thing. And that seems to help. Certain drugs can dampen the effects. But no one's found a little device that you can wear around that will block the signal.
Hat you can wear.
No tinfoil hats, no, they don't work.
Thank you.
I reckon we've got time for about two more. There's a lady up here who wants to ask one, and then I'd like to ask you a question at the end, if that's all right.
Oh, sure.
Sure, here we go.
You were talking about forced dreams. I know of 4 people in 2012 that had dreams about Atlanta, 2 in the UK and 2 in Florida, who kept having dreams about Atlanta, and 2 ended up moving there and 1 ended up going for a few months. And it's strange how we all kind of found each other there in Atlanta. But I was telling a friend of mine this before, and she said that ages ago an ex-FBI agent told her that there was a really large underground base in Atlanta where they're doing human experiments, and I know it sounds mad, but have you ever heard anything?
Not in Atlanta, but they are everywhere. I mean, I've heard the rumors. I've been to a couple secret bases in your countries, but no, I didn't find any human experimentation going on. But one of the things we were talking about, mind control and manipulation, part of the research they're doing is to see if they can manipulate people to run into other people. They call them information couriers. It's just part of a big game that the intelligence agencies are playing.
Okay, I'll come down to the stage, actually, because I think it's probably going to be the last question. Now, Dr. Duncan, you've given us a lot of reason over the last 2 days to be concerned by the potential for abuse of this technology. At the end of your presentation today, you feel quite optimistic about the idea of transhumanism. I mean, maybe you're talking about a perfect world where we can draw perfect circles or whatever, but in my view, how is it possible for transhumanism to be a good thing without some almost unimaginable social revolution? And I mean, as Max Egan, I don't know if you've seen Max Egan's video about transhumanism. He puts it very succinctly, and he says, how much can we be transhumanized without losing our humanity, especially where we have rulers who have none?
And that's an excellent point, and that's why I try to ask more questions than I answers. It has to be a social revolution. I mean, that's the only way it could be accepted by society. But this is so gradual within our generations that it will become more and more acceptable. So people walking around with Bluetooth, headsets, well, now we accept that. They look like the Borg, and so slowly this will eventually be rolled in, and we won't give it another thought. When a child is born, we genetically engineer them, with blue eyes or whatever they.
Some might argue, though, that the technology we already have. The technology we already have is sort of cutting us off from each other. I mean, I'm guilty here myself. I apart from my family in my hometown and the men I live with, I know one person. But I have thousands of friends online, so maybe.
Yeah. So is that just a redefinition of how to be social? What is a friend on Facebook? How often you talk to them? You can't shake their hand, you can't hug them. I don't know. This is something society is going to have to deal with. This is a social revolution. It's occurring right now at a very rapid rate. I call it a cataclysmic evolutionary event in mankind.
Yeah, it could, and also, since we do have a malevolent elite in this world, the potential for the potential danger here is enormous.
It is, and I think there may be an agenda to depopulate the world.
Oh, I think there is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, sleep tight. I know, but it's grim stuff. I know, and it
is grim stuff.
It is.
Leave on a happy note.
Look at it this way. I mean, if people are not talking about this, then it'll be an awful lot worse than if people are talking about it. I mean, that would really scare me if this was going on and people were not talking about it. So, Dr. Robert Duncan, thank you very much for speaking to us again.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, the man I want to speak to is here. We've reached the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is the end of the second international conference for the BASIS project and its first film festival. Thank you, Robert Duncan, for coming the whole way from the United States. Thank you for the rest of you for coming here. It's been tough. There has been major new things discovered and behind the scenes happening here. We've had a few things here and a few things there. Very exciting. You're all invited to go to the Marlborough for 8 o'clock. This is it, and thank you. And could I just have one final word for Matthew Williams, who's our videographer and vision mixer. The great talented people outside, Roger and Rosemary, Nicole, and our other guy who helps protect the web. The website was given a bit of a hit, I gather. And to Ben, who stood in instead for the wonderful Danielle, and let's wish Danielle the ability to be able to go outside and come on her own next time. So to you and the BASIS project abroad and online, and all those who have been here, and to Gary, my dear friend, God bless, safe home, good luck, and have a nice time.
Yeah.
One more thing, ladies and gentlemen. Before you go, don't forget to say a big thank you to Mr. BASIS Project himself, Mr. Miles Johnston.